to have a transport plan that fits their needs. In El Paso, the Houston plan's not going to fit in El Paso, and that's why we'd have regional structures to do that. Who in the room thinks what I just mentioned is a good idea?
I second your motion.
Okay. Anybody think it's a bad idea that there's another play, there's another plan, another strategy to deal with this? All right, I'd like to take a vote on that real quickly just to make that. So we had a motion, my motion, and a second. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so that's unanimous. I'll take that. I don't even know where I'll take it. Probably to.
Go ahead and stand up, Joe.
No, not to Joe. Not to Joe. This will go to Kurt Cole and to Mr. Gruber. That's where that's headed, just so everybody knows. I think this is a real issue. I think there's intelligence, informational sharing. I think information sharing is a challenge. Chief Kidd's been pretty patient. He wanted to say something, and he may have to duck out. The legislature's going on. Do you want to comment real quickly? You were on the Infectious Disease Task Force.
Yeah, thanks. I think I've had the conversation a lot with most of y'all, but Eric said something pretty important, which is unusual. A few minutes ago, about 10 years ago, emergency management and what we in this room do on a daily basis. And I want to remind everybody that at the local level, we really have 3 peer groups that I think we deal with, and y'all may think more, and if you do, I want to hear them. But the one peer group is the pre-hospital providers. The second is the acute care. The third is the public health. And at your local level, you can probably identify several faces of the people that embody those 3 peer groups. Y'all agree with that? All 3 of those are represented in the room, right? Yet at the state level, there's one organization that I turn to deal with all 3 of those peer groups, and that's the Department of State Health Services. And so the people that had the job before me only knew what DSHS did for everything health and medical. But that's not the way it is on the streets, is it? So keep that in mind as we talk about moving forward and how we work together. And then a little bit about the EMTFs and new organizations and new structures. State law for emergency management's been around for quite a while. We, the EMTFs, are a brand new structure in that organization. Would you agree? So how many of you think the EMTF in its entirety is a local asset? Please raise your hand. Okay. How many of you think it's a regional asset? How many of you think it's a state asset? How many of you think it's a federal asset? Okay, y'all have thoroughly confused me. Which one is it?
Yes.
Okay, so I ask for your help and patience as we move forward with this. Because in Texas, all disasters are
Local.
Do you want them any other way? Okay, so as we start building EMTFs and RACs, I'm going to push hard in 2015 to have every DDC with a rep from every state agency that is qualified to be there and knowledgeable about the job duties. And I'm going to push to also have RACs represented at the DDC. Good idea or bad idea?
Good idea.
It's a problem. Why is it a problem?
It's not a state agency.
Because all disasters are local. And if you're going to represent a local hospital or a hospital system that's in several cities, we're going to have to stay in our lanes. This is going to be a big fight for me to take on. Because some people will argue that hospitals belong in cities under state law or in the unincorporated area of the county. They don't belong to regional organizational structures, like RACs. So if we're going to have RACs setting at the DDC, the RACs are going to have to make sure that we are coordinating at the local hospital level back to that city and that county because they deserve the knowledge. Would y'all agree with that? So this will be a challenge going forward. I just need us to understand that it's going to be a little weird, that we need to get on the same page. I don't think we have that written down yet, exactly what that's supposed to look like. But I do think it's the right process going forward, that not only do we have DSHS at the DDC, but we have representatives of the RAC at the DDC because they know more about what's happening at the local level in 2 of the 3 areas for health and medical.
So there are some entities, Chief Kidd, that are working on getting what we just said on paper, Health Service Region 7 see EMTF or the RACs or even the regions, the health service region teams as a local asset, even though they can call on them as a local asset. And so I agree, you're
yeah.
going to have a hard time, and whatever we need to do to help, I think we're all on board.
Well, you had some forward-thinking DDCs in your area. Captain Smith is now Major Smith and will be working with us in Austin. But it's not an easy path, and DSHS is not the only state agency that we're going to have to work harder with in order to get them at the DDC. TxDOT folks like to be out driving roads. Parks and Wildlife likes to be out doing what they do off the pavement. And so bringing them into the DDC and having our DDC stand up and run like mini SOCs or like larger EOCs is the big push for this year. And having the right level of representative in there. And I think we're going to have to work between the RAC chairs and the RAC directors and the DSHS folks to be sure that we have people identified that are trained in ICS, that have all of the classes that they need to have, position specific as well, and know how to better fill those needs. But we cannot get out of our lanes because most of our RAC folks are members of local hospitals. We're going to have to remember we still owe it back to that city mayor and that county judge to have the conversations before we request resources to the state. And I think we're going to have to find some way to say, today we are local. This just became a regional asset. Okay, now I'm a state asset. And in some way that has got to be shared so that we all see it the same way. Because I think we just kind of maneuver our way through it right now and it works pretty good. But if we want to institutionalize it, we all have to understand it's at the same place at that same moment in time. Good, bad? Agree, disagree? Thanks.
Eric,
Yep.
if I may, and this kind of reinforces some of what he said, but you've heard it said from me before, and I'm going to beat my drum again. In this room, we do an outstanding job of developing some wonderful programs for the state. I still, and you heard it from me back in the EMT infancy days, that we have some shortcomings on communicating these plans and programs out to the lowest, smallest agencies. I think our problem's going to develop when we've got the small agency that's uninformed, that's going to take that patient, make some inappropriate decisions, and just compound the problem. So it's incumbent on each and every one of us, from the RAC levels down to local agencies, that we are reaching out and educating these people and sharing what the plans are to effectively deal with this.
I completely agree. I believe that regional advisory, I'm biased. I'm a director at a regional advisory council. But I believe if we don't have effective regional emergency healthcare systems that work day to day and have meetings where we're talking day to day with providers, with 911 providers in hospitals and bringing those people together with EMS medical directors, and we have to have RACs if we're going to survive. We will not do well in a disaster without a regular regional emergency healthcare system that works well. We may not do well in the disaster if we have a great system, but we will absolutely not do well in a disaster if we don't already start from the basis of a day-to-day system that works pretty well. I don't even have to ask for a vote for that. I know that to be fact. And Brad, to your point, it could be about backboards, right? It's the same problem with backboards getting stolen from, the trauma center. If we have messages, we have information we share between 911 providers and others. It doesn't have to be about the Ebola plan. It can be about how we're going to safeguard backboards and those, right? It's about having a system that works well together regularly that people participate in. I believe we could do this literally for 10 hours today alone on Ebola and all the topics we're talking about, whether it's training, logistics, integration with emergency management, public health, information sharing. I could go on and on. But that's got to get started in a group of people, many of you, I hope, through your EMTF efforts, locally, regionally, and as a state, occasionally as a statewide asset as well. I believe in our area, I'll just say how we do our ambulance strike teams. Ambulance strike team for an MCI for 20 people is the same ambulance strike team that's going to go to Galveston as part of it is the EMTF MCI plan. You have your mutual aid that you call, that you use regularly, and our next step for what we would call regional mutual aid is my buddy's buddy. Goes through MedCom, and that gets activated no different if we're going to West, going to Galveston for 3 weeks, or it's the same strike team leaders and the same coordination process as we do, whether we're going to a bus wreck in Hondo or we're going to Galveston for 3 weeks. I'm not sure every EMTF region's doing it that way today because of pre-existing processes and kind of a migration, but I think that's where we should be headed. That's what I think. I mean, I'm having to. Okay, this agenda's like we have 23 minutes. It's kind of a disaster right now. This whole day's been weird because of the moving of the rooms. We have been covering number 3, this Ebola infectious disease response summary. Bruce or Jeff, neither one of them are here. I haven't seen them. I'm going to have this stand on our. Everybody agree that Ebola/infection, we're going to call it high consequence infectious disease response. We ought to have that on our agenda from now on for a little while.
Yes.
Yeah.
Eric. Is that your affirmation?
That's a reminder that I thought I'd be out of this meeting and doing something else. We're going to talk real quickly about, we're going to postpone the discussion of the, well, actually, no, I'd like to talk about number 4, the RH mock. Did I skip over anything else? Oh, number 2, Joe, can we do 2 seconds on MIST and ASM courses, and then we're going to get back to the agenda?
Well, yes, of course. The MIST and ASM courses have been finalized. We're working on rostering attendees from the regions at this point. The initial ambulance staging manager course is going to be conducted the 1st and 2nd of April in College Station. The initial MIST course is going to be conducted 29 and 30 April, and that's going to be starting the day after a bunch of other meetings. So it was decided to locate that course in Austin. And finally, the MIST and ASM annual update, we used to call the refreshers, are scheduled for the last week in May in coordination with the 2015 Hurricane Showcase, whatever you want to call that, at
Governor's display.
Right, at the Austin Bergstrom Airport. So that is going to be the 27th, 26th and 27th and 28th of May in Bastrop, with a follow-on day at the showcase on the 29th. All of those flyers and all that information is available from the regional EMTF coordinators. They're the ones that are rostering students to the class.
So I'm doing a little performance improvement quick snapshot here. How many of you guys have that flyer, got that flyer quickly a month or so ago? Raise your hand. Okay. Who didn't get it, doesn't even know what we're talking about with those dates and times, never saw a flyer, don't know anything about the MIST and ASM class? Anybody?
Well,
Jeff, we're probably not hitting the docs well. That's an how do we get to the EMS? How do we get to the EMTF medical directors?
They have a list.
They do have a list server. I'm not sure we sent it to them. No, that's what I meant. I was calling us out. I don't think we're getting to the. I don't think we hit the right list server. We never thought to send that to the EMS medical directors and the EMTF medical directors list server. I don't think we sent it to there, did we?
no.
We'll send that out today. We're going to do that today. Sorry about that. That's a good. I think we missed that more than I care to admit. Probably, Michelle, if we could make a task, we need to have an EMTF info, and it basically grabs one of those things Ryan builds where we grab every list member from any EMTF faction, right? So if you send it to Texas EMTF info in the future, it basically every night grabs any member of any EMTF list and puts it into the info list. That'd be helpful. That way we hit everybody no matter what. Doesn't mean we have to send everything there. If we have a focused thing, we may not want to send it there, but when we do, that's where we'll send it. Okay. The RH MOCs, the Regional Health and Medical Operations Center, This goes to what Chief Kidd was just talking about, covering down on the DDCs. This talks about the three major stakeholder groups of EMS, acute care / hospital, and public health, and that two of the three of those RACs are intimately involved daily with hospitals and EMS and need to be fully integrated with that. How many of you guys are aware that we have a system in place in Texas that the Department of State or the CDC, when a patient that's being watched, that's coming back for the 21 days that they're going to watch them, everybody know what I'm talking about? Okay, they go through five airports. They're identified and screened, and when they're screened, they're basically given a small pack of the thermometer and a little card and some instructions, and then DSHS at the state is notified, and then the local public health authority is notified for, depending on low, medium, or high risk, whatever they are, for that 21-day period. And low may mean they call them, and high may mean an actual on-site visit to their home twice a day. Everybody aware of that system? So I got a bunch of hospital and a bunch of EMS people, a bunch of emergency management people. Have you been notified by your public health authority in the last 2 months that you have anyone being watched in your area?
Only when I ask.
Only when you ask. You have been notified by your public health authority that, hey, by the way, we're watching somebody, we got. Okay. Christine? Yes?
We know about, yeah.
You know every time?
We have those.
How do you know if you know every time?
Because I just assumed-
You know the 100% of the ones they know, they told you.
The ones that they, right.
Okay.
100% of what I know. Like,
Right.
I mean, we're at 100 people in the regions I service that have been monitored.
100.
There should be more than that. Wanda should have a bunch.
Yeah, right.
You got Fort Bliss.
if I-
You got all those troops coming back from.
Okay, I take it back. I know about those because the military tells me that.
Right. Okay. Is it helpful if you're a treatment hospital or one of the other hospitals, or if you're an EMS agency that they might be in your city? Is that helpful to know that someone's being screened? Would that be helpful? Would that be information? Not,
Yes.
is that something you would want to know from I'm just talking about
I'm not
situational awareness.
I think they're asking Eric to find out which hospital they want to go to once they're being monitored. So I don't know if they're contacting the hospital, let them know, hey, we're monitoring something.
They're not.
I suggested that in our area, and they are not.
No, so hold on.
Yeah, I don't want to know.
So I want to go into tiering of information. Low tier, tier 1, how we'll do this. So Alpha, Bravo, we'll come up with something cool. I just want to know if there's someone in the area. I don't even know what county they're in that region. Then the next thing is well, could I know down to the county level? I don't have personal health information. I don't have name, address. I don't have any of that. I simply know in Bexar County right now there's X number of people being monitored on any given Sunday. Situational awareness wise, that seems to be something that I think would make some sense. Who in the room thinks that makes some sense? Show of hands. Who thinks it doesn't make any sense? Doesn't matter if they're monitoring, don't monitor, don't care, don't want to know. Okay? So far, I've heard from one region that seems to be giving you nearly all that information regularly. I'm going to tell you that I think that in most of the state, that's not being done consistently, if it's being done at all. If there's 100 people in Region 7-ish that have been monitored, I don't personally know how many in Region 8.
That's only in my regions, in Region 7.
Now, they're not symptomatic. We're not going to go put right, they're not symptomatic. If they develop symptoms, then they have instructions to call, right? High consequence infectious disease monitoring like that, I think we should know about, at least down to the county level. I don't think that's a super secret. It's not certainly not a PHI issue.
But Eric, have you asked? I mean,
Yes,
we have regular meeting with our county.
yes.
I know exactly how many is in Denton County. I know exactly how many is in each one of the cities. I don't know where they live. I don't know their name. But, I mean, we have a relationship built with our Denton County Health to get that. I mean, but it also goes back to the health director and what he feels needs to be done. So, and they're all different. So, but, I mean, as much information he legally can release, he releases.
If I
Should
ask,
we-
they will
well-
tell me, but I do not get any type of routine.
Who gets information down to the patient address for CAD? Some?
Only if they're positive.
So our EMS agencies know in the area for which there's a patient in one region.
There are EMS agencies in this state that are getting from their local public health authority the address to insert into CAD to flag. No different than you have. It's not like a tier 2, right? I mean, it's like that it will flag. No one,
It's very useful.
the station that they're still alarmed, they would not know. They're not told, hey, this address is a problem, but it's in CAD and then it expires. So that if a request for service does come from that address, the paramedics, the engine company, the first responders, whoever's going, can be said, hey, this patient may be is being monitored by the health department. Call this number for further details. Helpful, not helpful? I think that's probably pretty helpful. I don't know that there's gray areas whether it's legal.
Well, we had that happen. So, Dallas-Fort Worth, we had the knowns. So we got that information through the police department. They put those in CAD, except Silence didn't stay in CAD because there's people that put it in CAD, and they spread it around the dispatchers that, hey, by the way, this address, there's this, if it comes up. Well, next comes out an email to law enforcement personnel who then know about it, and so where the gentleman lived, they get called and ask that question, and the officer's not knowing better. So next thing you know, this guy's identity is compromised, and he gets all the flack he shouldn't have got. And so that then now ends up in a legal battle because he wasn't positive, so he's not a public threat, and so therefore the release of his personal information by the statutes we have in place didn't allow that release information. So it's dangerous. So until somehow the statutes get changed enough to allow that permissible information, I think we play dangerous information sharing. Because as well as I do, the general public don't know the full aspects of the disease, and so they immediately, take their children out of school. I mean, it goes through a whole process.
Especially for someone who's asymptomatic and simply being monitored because of a screening process, right? So I think there's a debate to be had about the address and the specific identity sharing information. I don't think, however, that knowing that there's a count in the county is I think that's just good situational awareness. Do any of you guys have formal, let me ask another question about it then. Do any of you guys have formal information sharing agreements through your RMOC or through your relationship with your health department for confidentiality? Basically, like, I don't want to say it's a BAA, but it would be, here's the rules in the road. We're going to give you information, but you're not allowed to share that, blah, blah, blah. Does anybody have written that you've signed a document like that? Nobody?
I don't think it exists.
Would you sign it? Would you have a problem if there was if we came to some agreement, we had a template to say, we feel like there's a bona fide need to know of these 10 or 15 people, and that they're part of the senior planning team for the Ebola response from acute care and from public health and from public safety and emergency management. If you can imagine who that group is, right? That you'd be willing to sign that? I mean, I would. Who in the room has a secret clearance today? Raise your hand high if you have secret. Nobody else? Nobody with TS, SCI, nothing else in the room. Okay?
So, Eric, could we start that particular process with some of the language that we already do for like the regional registries about sharing data, who we share it with? I mean, we have that with our public health about the data that we enter into the registry, and I would see that this would be a similar document with similar language of protection of the data, but in more emergency management realm than maybe the informatics.
So this changes, from my perspective, yes, that may be a place to start. I actually would start from the other direction, from the intelligence side.
So Eric,
I think there are laws about Homeland, and I'm going to change to Homeland Security as opposed to emergency management. And I would say the fusion centers, the way we share LES, the law enforcement sensitive, there's statute about that, no different than we have statute about the public health privacy rules in 8, whatever there, it's in health and safety code, and there's an area about infectious disease and what information can and can't be shared. So my point is, I think, except with an express need to know, I think that what Chief Kidd referenced earlier about putting the right groups together and starting to deal with these issues in a more structured fashion, information sharing in the crisis management component, not consequence management, in the crisis management component, pre-incident, right? Does everybody know what I'm talking about? We need to have better structure and agreements on who does and doesn't know what, when, where, and how. I think that needs to be worked out. That doesn't mean that everybody gets to know everything.
but one of the problems may be that, and I'll use Dallas-Fort Worth, so our RAC would know patients located in Denton County, for instance, but yet our RAC has no response authority or knowledge of those responses. I think it's more, it comes down that information sharing locally for the responding agencies and maybe the local hospital versus not necessarily the region, because the chance of the information getting out is too great, and the repercussions from that information getting out is even greater. But they don't really need to know so much as I need to know that if I have somebody living in Louisville that, hey, I got somebody there. Now, the difference is, since, the original 3 patients, the communication lines have opened up in the fact that public health knows every one of those individuals unless they come somehow behind the curve. So what happens is they have contact with them. So if an event happens and we respond to an area, we've given, we have a special number. We call it, hey, we're going to 123 Main Street. Is this person live there? And if it is, then they say yes. We'll meet you at the scene.
Okay, so I have two questions. Number one is, you're aware if you have a POTUS, VPOTUS visit to your city, usually 2 days, sometimes more days ahead of time, right? There's a Secret Service connection. That's how we all know how that works. So that's how that works. Do you think your DC for that area knows?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Way ahead of time,
Okay.
I would think.
So, and there's no
Research.
threat.
I'm making an assumption.
There's a heightened sense of awareness because there could be a problem.
Right.
There isn't a problem. There could be a problem if the President of the United States, Vice President of the United States, any of the members of the cabinet, if those people are in town, you know about it. You know about it. We do that information sharing among federal and state and regional and local entities to make sure people have situational awareness ahead of time in case something bad happens. We didn't say anything is going to happen. We said it might happen. Do you think that if you have a patient that's being followed and that local connection that you were referring to, do you think your health service region knows about that patient?
I know the responding agency knows about it,
They know about it.
but I don't know the
Your health
healthcare.
service region knows about it.
Yes.
They
Oh,
do
yes.
know about it.
Yes.
Yes.
they do.
Correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Adele? Yes. They do know about it because CDC calls DSHS central office. the central office then makes sure that the health
The
service
and the
region,
calls them.
using your example, why would the health service region need to know about it at all?
Well,
It's a
it's coming
local
through-
issue. It's going to be followed by the local health
But
department.
it's coming through the public health side, and that's the only reason they know about it.
Right. I don't think it's only because it's coming through there. I think that's how it happens. My belief is they should know about it. I think they should know about it because they are going to be a support mechanism if something weird happens. And that will all get ramped up very quickly.
Well, I think that's also because they were tasked that you will monitor these patients as they come in.
Not the region. Not if
In
there's
some-
if there's
If
a local
there's a-
public health authority in that area, the local public.
Right.
Fidel, make
You're
sure.
right.
Who else is public health? I mean, in this realm,
But there's not many
I'm
of them.
correct,
You're
right?
correct. You're
Yes.
If there's a local public health authority, the local public health authority epi team follows that patient, not the region.
Unless that area doesn't have a.
If they do not have a local public health authority, the regional office is the local public health and provides primary local
Correct.
public health capability and will be following that patient.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay? So, but the region knows either way.
They know because that's a chain of.
Right. Well,
That they
theoretically,
established.
yeah, that the DSH has established so that their regions would have situational awareness.
Does that go back?
I agree with that. I would think it would make sense that other team members of the regional health and medical operations centers that we're bringing together, I'm not talking about everybody, I'm talking about the select, everybody in your health service regional office doesn't know. It's still a need-to-know basis. It's defining what those need-to-know people are, and then making sure we're covering our bases, that we have documents and agreements in place, and that people understand the sensitivity and the responsibility for that, and then weighing those on what's the value. And that value proposition doesn't get to be decided by only one side of the equation. I mean, you at least should have a conversation about it. And we're not having that conversation about it consistently across the state.
But you said some key things. If we have those statutes or regulations or rules or the agreements in place, which we don't today, then yes, I understand and I agree it could be shared. Public health has those in place as a statute, state law, and some federal laws. And so they're bound not to release a lot of that information. And so therefore, they don't want to send it outside that loop because they know then at that point they have no control over it.
Today, we've heard from a bunch of people. Christine knows there's been 100 monitored in her area.
Ish.
I don't know of any. None have been in San Antonio.
Yeah.
I think that's probably not true.
So Eric, to give you an idea of what you're talking about in numbers, as of 3 weeks ago, there's 2,000 people being monitored nationally. And that will be ongoing, the number's going down. But as the CDC said last week, we're going to be in this until there are 0 patients in Africa. So that's their determination, because the question was asked,
When does
where's
it
the
stop?
end?
Yeah.
And the answer was very clearly that it's 0 in Africa.
You're talking specifically for Ebola?
Yes, I'm sticking for Ebola.
So, okay, well, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I don't think we should speak specifically to Ebola because Ebola is just.
High consequence.
I agree.
High consequence infectious disease.
I agree 100%, and I think we can have this conversation about sharing of information of the possibilities without including in the conveation to ensure that the providers treat everyone as if they have some kind of a disease.
Right.
And the social distance, the rushing in is over. We got to use our heads a little bit better. And we all teach and we all practice scene safe gloves, our gloves on scene safe, but we don't mean it. And if we don't start doing that, we're going to continue having the same discussion, like you said, with preparing for the Oklahoma bombing.
For my information, is there been identified what those high consequence diseases are? I mean, look at what's going on with measles. We're getting more, not going with measles right now. Where do you draw the line at?
I don't think it matters. You got to think everyone's infected until proven not.
But I agree with Joe. If we go back to the basics of our infection control practices, and we say we got the gloves and we practice with it to some degree, but do we really practice with it?
So I'm going to revert. So I was honored. I was flattered, I was honored to be able to lead the state component of the Texas Task Force 1 mission to Katrina in New Orleans. I took 35 rescuers to New Orleans for 10 days. We rescued almost 5,000 people. I'd say rescued, we put them in boats and drove them from A to B in flat water. There's not a lot of swift water, but we had the right people, the right structure, the right equipment. If you watched TV, can you imagine, if you weren't there, what the water must have smelled like? It was basically a giant vat of hazmat terribleness, right? Sewage, very, very difficult circumstances. We came back, I took 35 fire rescue dudes, not well known necessarily for incredible hand hygiene all the time, right? Not necessarily that group. Rough and tumble, squared away rescue guys. How much GI do you think we came back with a problem? GI-related illness? 0. You know why? Because they lived and breathed Purell. They lived and breathed soap and water. We had Purell in the door jambs of the truck, because you don't think when you go to back up the truck and you walk out of the water and you get in the truck, now the truck is contaminated. So they had Purell at the ice chests. We quit using ice after the second day because people were getting in the ice chest, and now the water and the ice water is all messy. We just drank hot water, because you can pick up the hot water and take the cap off and drink it. It was just water, just hydrating. We had 0 incidents of GI-related problems, but that's because we were in a high environment where everyone knew there was a high possibility. If I went back to the station and watched, now I didn't eat anything for about 2 weeks without smelling Purell. I put it on hamburgers like if I didn't smell it when I put food to my mouth, I panicked, right? If I'd been to their station or in my house 2 weeks before that, I could have mowed the grass and picked up dog poop or something and walked back inside. Probably wouldn't have washed my hands and eaten some chips sitting there before a ball game. I'm telling you what probably would have happened. So the idea that, well, we need to practice infection control, if you don't understand the risk, if you see the risk, if you're aware of the risk, if you know it's there, you're going to have a higher degree of what you're willing to do from a behavior perspective. All the messages on the mirrors, all of that stuff that we get put out there, that's great, but it doesn't really affect behavior like being aware there's a real problem like a high consequence infectious disease. Now I'm back to being aware situationally if that is in our town, if that number's going up or down. It could affect your differential diagnosis. Actually, if you knew there's thousands of what's the TB number right now? Is it up or down, right? I mean, I wouldn't consider TB. Maybe TB should be on that list. I don't know.
We're talking about things that go above and beyond normal.
Someone asked for the list of high consequence. What would you guys list? Who says Ebola? Okay. Lassa. I mean, I would put all hemorrhagic fevers, right?
Yep.
Everybody agree? Yep. What else? MERS, SARS.
The high-strain bird flus that are out there.
Certain
Novel flus.
novel flus. The flu? I think novel flu. I'm just spitballing. SARS.
Why wouldn't we go by the infectious disease leveling that they have established?
What is it?
So like Ebola is like a 4 or 5 because of its intensity to do infectious disease. There are a lot of other things that we come in contact with that are extra higher in infection, in the chance to give infection to someone else than Ebola is. I don't know the numbers though. I mean, I know some of them.
So the reason I was trying to make it yes, no, and call them high consequence and just list them, because no one, we don't even know the numbers, right? Right. Let's take the list and find it. Look it up, Google it, and we'll figure it out. We're not making the list today. I'm just trying to jot it down to get an idea. Yeah, I think there's a difference. HIV, theoretically can kill you. You're not dead in a month. You're not dead in 3 weeks. That's Ebola. People are like, well, it's bloodborne. I go, yeah, but
I mean, CDC has a division of high consequence pathogens, so
What
we
are
should
they?
probably look at that.
yeah, I agree. Do you think it's bizarre we're sitting in a room with 100, 125 healthcare, EMS, hospital, emergency management types, and we're as, I was going to say ignorant. I don't mean stupid, right? We're as ignorant to this stuff.
Uneducated.
I think that's part of the issue. We bear that burden to understand this stuff, but we also bear the burden to work with our public health colleagues to make sure that transparency, trust is built with transparency. And we have to have transparent interaction. That doesn't mean I know everything they know. That doesn't mean they know everything I know. It means that we sit down and walk through a matrix of things and agree to what we're going to share. And when those things happen, you share them every time. If we agree we're not going to share box A, then we don't share it. We can have an argument about it. We'll have a big debate, and then at the end of the day, we say, well, this isn't legal, or this isn't ethical, or this isn't moral, or this is too high a risk. The risk, the thrust to weight ratio is the value of knowing versus the value of it getting out. I'm fine with that's a discussion. That's a mature adult process to come up with a matrix of what we are and are not going to share. But once we do that, we have to follow through in both directions and share that information to make sure that this void that we're starting to, I'm seeing it. I've seen it across the state in many conversations that I've had with some of you guys.
I think one thing is getting public health involved with us, because during the Ebola on the first patient, you had them working their lane, and we were over here in our lane, and there was never that bridge between, because they don't work with us on a daily basis.
So I believe that there are dedicated emergency preparedness public health folks that know and live and breathe and work with us regularly. I mean, I'm looking at one of them right now. Fidel's there. He's been in almost every meeting I think I've been in the last 2 years. But to say public health is part of our challenge. It's the other teams that are essential to this effort in the infectious disease side of the house that are not necessarily well integrated to our emergency management processes. It was interesting. We had an infectious disease, an epi conversation one day. They said we have a great relationship with the hospital. I went, really? It's about 10 years. It's about 7 years ago. And during H1N1, they say we have a great relationship. I said, oh. And so, well, what's that point of contact? You know, so, well, it's at the time ICPs, the infection preventionists. I went, ooh, yeah, they're a good contact for trying to get information about some of the patients you're following stuff. But I mean, in a lot of ways, I'm saying this tongue in cheek. So any of the infection preventionists on the TV, they're like the internal affairs of a police department. I mean, they're not very. When they're there in your unit, you have a problem, right? So it's interesting that from the public health perspective, the hospital was that point of contact they work with regularly, but that's not the emergency department. That's not the CNO and sort of the way through the building and the nursing side of the house. I mean, not at Saturday afternoon at 8:30 p.m. So I think we need to be cautious as well when we say public health. I think we have good interaction with our emergency preparedness colleagues. I'm not sure we have developed that same level of trust and understanding of both sides of the equation with our infectious disease and epi side of the house. Do you guys agree with that? Okay, we're 11 minutes over. I promised to get out of here at 11. On the legislative update, when we'll wrap this up, who went to the Capitol yesterday as part of the TTEF day? Raise your hand. Thank you guys very much. We will have more of these. Joe Palfini did an EMTF. We're looking for an ask to support state funding in the legislature for EMTF. The federal funds are wildly dynamic. They go up and down based on whatever. And we can't build a solid program. We need core funding for the EMTF program, and we're pursuing that as we speak. Made a lot of good connections yesterday, had a lot of good conversations. I don't want to go into it in detail until the dust settled. Joe's working on some language as we speak, actually. I think we'll have good support, though, and I'll stay tuned. I think we had I told somebody it's like a football game. It's like the Super Bowl. Yesterday was the first series, right? We got the ball. It's the first series, and we threw about a 35, 40-yard pass and moved the ball. It's 1st and 10. It's still the first quarter. We haven't even gotten popcorn made, right? We got 4 more long quarters before we get to the end of the game. It could have been a fumble, and they'd be running it back going the other way for a touchdown. So I think yesterday the 40-yard pass, moving the ball from the 20, we moved the ball a bunch on the first series. Bill 538, please look at that bill, Senate Bill 538. It's about quarantining. It's about the powers. There's some mental health language that got pushed over and is going to be utilized, is proposed in that language. I would ask that we could start talking about that on the GETAC disaster list server if you guys have thoughts about that. It will give, it would assign authority to be able to quarantine and or isolate with law enforcement and emergency departments and that kind of stuff. It's you need to read it. I'm withholding judgment just yet until we kind of have some conversation about it. Carol?
This morning I attended a hearing. I got the very strong impression that the Department of State Health Services has taken steps to include in their budget money to offset any shortfall we might have with our tobacco funds. So regardless of how the tobacco fund corpus ends up, it sure sounded to me as if general revenue is being requested to make sure that we stay whole.
Does everybody know what he's talking about? Okay, there was $35 million removed and was assigned to CPRIT, and that money came out of our $100 million of the trauma endowment that's been living there and generating interest for 15 years. And that money went down, so the interest you make off of 65 is different than the money you make off of the 100. And that directly affects RACs. If you're asking yourself, why does that matter in the Disaster and Emergency Preparedness Committee, I'll refer you back to 10, 20, or whatever time it was when I said, if we do not have well-functioning, day-to-day regional emergency and trauma healthcare systems, we will not do well in disaster. They are interconnected, interwoven to a very high degree. So RACs are essential to disaster preparedness because they have to make sure the system is working well together. The EMS agencies and hospitals and air medical providers and physicians are working seamlessly, and we do the right things every day. The other big issue is RAC funding. 50 cents per Texan is kind of the way to think of it, half of an app. It's one way to think of it. Half of a 99-cent app purchase. That results in about $13 million per year. So it's a $26 million on the biennium. We're working with TTAF on that as well. I'm not saying that for or against in this room at the GETAC Disaster Committee. I am saying if you have interest in that, please get involved, start participating. If you don't have interest or think that shouldn't happen, go do whatever you need to do for that as well. What else? Any other bills right now that we need to be following and discuss? 538's big. I would go pull it down this afternoon in a meeting where you're bored and read it. Not my meeting. You would never be bored in here. But. What else? Any comments from the audience about things we didn't talk about today? Okay. I apologize for the move in the meetings. How many people thought, just a quick performance improvement, how many thought today's conversation and discussion was pretty effective? Raise your hand. All right, good. How many people thought it wasn't? Like this was kind of a waste of time. We missed some other real issues that we should have been talking about. Anybody? What are we missing? What else should go on the agenda that you feel strongly about that we're not even like, why aren't we ever talking about X? Earthquakes? Who thinks earthquakes are a problem we ought to have on the agenda? Ricky definitely thinks so. I'm not kidding you. They found the fault line.
We're all gonna wish we had once we have a big one.
Yeah, we'll work on. Yeah, it's terrible. All right. Well, I don't have anything else. If you guys don't have anything else, next meeting is it's going to come up at GETAC. GETAC and the TDEM conference are on the same week. Unfortunately, Chief Kidd got away before we talked to him about it, but we're not changing their dates because they've already locked that in with the convention center. Who would prefer that we move they move GETAC to the TDEM conference if we could, if it was allowed? Yeah. So we can move our committee. I would prefer we move GETAC in toto, right? I mean, if we're going to do it, we move the whole thing so that we're not kind of running back and forth and it's disjointed. That'll be another discussion. Tune in. But I'm going to tell them that can we vote on that? I haven't adjourned, have I? Have a motion to second? All right. Any discussion about that? Basically, the motion would be that we want to move not only our committee, but all of GETAC to the TDEM conference. It's in San Antonio, right? That we would move that in the May meeting. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? I needed that for the GTEC meeting. I'll have to work that out. All right. Thank you, guys.